Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Filmocracy podcast presented by Film Festival Mastery. Again, we're joined by John Fitzgerald, CEO of iGEMS and Film Festival Mastery, and obviously missing is Justin Giddings, our other half, our other third, I should say. But hopefully he can rejoin us at some point. But in the meantime, we will have an efficient conversation without his lackluster contribution. Um, I hope he sees this. All right. So I think there's a lot of things happening right now, and we want to stay up to date. So why don't we kick it off, John, with CinemaCon, which happened last week?
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time for them. NATO reps were there in full force. For those of you who didn't realize just how many they have, they represent over 35,000 movie theaters across over 100 countries. And his team was saying that they only lost around 2% of theaters, which I think everybody thought was low. Does that sound low to you, Paul?
Shockingly low, yes, but apparently theaters have somehow managed to survive this pandemic.
Yeah, it's a miracle actually. Um, so some of the big news out of CinemaCon, uh, obviously it's really for the theaters. So they're talking about tentpole movies. What a big summer they have planned. Um, Maverick, I guess, was screened in its entirety, which I gather doesn't happen a lot at CinemaCon, and everybody was raving about it. So, it only took them 30 years for the sequel, but everybody's talking about it. And of course, we'll get into the festival front later with Cannes, but they're doing a tribute to Cruise there. And yeah.
Should be an exciting summer. I mean, there's also a lot of movies that have been held back, waiting for the right moment, and it seems that this summer is that moment. So it's kind of a packed summer schedule. Myself and my partner have decided that we're going to resume AMC A List and just, watch all of these awesome movies coming out. Um, not
That's
to
awesome. Hey,
sidetrack,
Paul, did you hear that Movie Pass is going to make a comeback?
I did not hear that.
I just read that this weekend. I was shocked.
I think I heard that they were purchased by somebody else.
Yeah, he bought it back. The original
Oh,
founder who started it, was his idea. I'm blanking on his name.
mhm.
Simon, I think. Yeah, he got pushed out, and
Stacy
then
Spikes.
there you go, Stacy. Okay, so he got pushed out, and then I don't know, a year or two back, he went and chased the board down to find out what they were charging for the assets, and I think it was $200,000 or 250,000,
Wow.
something pretty minor, and he bought it back, and yeah, he's making a comeback sometime this year, and he's negotiating with theaters now, and of course he's getting that kind of "I love you, don't touch me" thing, right? Where it sounds like a great idea, but I don't quite want to sign just yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Obviously, there's a lot of shady stuff happening towards the end of MoviePass's demise, but because of that, we got A-List, which is an incredible value. And I wonder if MoviePass can make something out of themselves now that A-List is really mature now. And I just learned actually that MoviePass tickets, when you watch a film, it counts as $8.95 tickets sold towards the box office. So that kind of, I mean, it hurts, but at the same time, they have such scale that 8.95, I guess, is tolerable. They made this deal, I guess, with all of the films that if it's an A-list film, if it's included, then you have to only get 8.95 per towards your box office. But watching three movies a week and A-list itself costs $24, like that's pretty easy to get that value. I'm surprised, but I love it.
So do they lock it to certain slots, or can you see a Saturday night primetime show?
Yeah, everything I've seen, it's open to everything. Even like Prime and like 3D, Dolby Digital, like all of the bells and whistles, like it doesn't matter. It's pretty
Huh.
impressive.
I
Yeah.
I got the sense, I never joined it, but I got the sense with MoviePass that they were essentially negotiating for the, you know, the least the least slots, like, the
Yeah, yeah,
Tuesday through Thursday, Monday through
right.
Thursday,
Hmm.
almost back to the, you remember Tug back in the day when you could release a film through Tug and they would contact all the theaters. It was a boon for independence for a few years. A few movies made over $1 million. So it was a big deal, and they were essentially booking theaters that agreed to the terms of the deal with Tug for screenings Monday through Thursday, and filmmakers earned a piece, and they could set the threshold. It was pretty exciting. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But one of the other big subjects out of CinemaCon was just the idea that maybe with this Discovery deal and new leadership, they were going to kind of go back to somewhat normal windows. Maybe not 45 days, but Warner Brothers wasn't going to be doing the day and date thing
Hmm.
anymore. Did you hear about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've heard on multiple fronts that everyone wants to go back. I think maybe we've kind of, as a society, pivoted too hard into the everything all at once mentality, like the whole series, the whole, season of everything, and day and date everything. And there is value, as we've seen with Netflix too, of having things spaced apart. I mean, it sounds like a cash grab, and it kind of is, but it also allows things to just like gestate and marinate and let people become
Hmm.
aware of what's happening, what's coming out, because this flood of shows and movies is really hard to digest sometimes.
Yeah, and you're right, Paul. And one of the things that we talked about on our last podcast was just what a fan you are of everything everywhere all at once. And it's a perfect segue, because one of the things that people were talking about at CinemaCon is the idea that, at least they like to suggest that it's important, is the idea to show original content and create original movies. And I think there are a lot of us that, well, we certainly love to be in theaters more and more regularly. It can't just be sequels and Marvel and DCU and Star Wars and Pixar, and that there is life outside that 18 to 24 audience. And that movie you just mentioned, it's becoming a hit, certainly by smaller film standards, right?
Yeah, and that movie actually benefited from a platform release. So they went
Exactly.
from the LA, New York markets, more and more theaters each week, build up that word of mouth, and now they actually had a increase in their box office from the previous week, which is really like that's not normally how this goes. Usually you get most of your money the first weekend and then half the next and half the next after that. But the word of mouth is so strong that they think that it might beat Uncut Gems, which is A24's top box office getter, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, the idea of a platform release really worked well for them. I think they started on 10 screens and they're over 2,000 now.
Yeah,
So that's a big deal for a small movie like that had its world premiere at South by Southwest last year. I mean, it,
yeah.
it, it does prove that these smaller movies can work, but I just wonder, when you start having these conversations again with the theater owners, how much interest they have in these smaller movies, and whether they're going to be willing to push out some of these bigger titles. Remember, there was that period where you'd see Spider-Man on 4 or 5 screens at a multiplex, instead of maybe giving up some of those screens to some smaller films. And I think one of the things that seemed to be happening during the pandemic, when there was a huge spike in streaming, was that it kind of opened the doors for some independent films and some documentaries that wouldn't have otherwise really had an opportunity. So it's an interesting double-edged sword, I think, when you start thinking about this movie, you know, everything everywhere all at once, and how many
Yeah.
other movies will have a chance like that to break out. I mean, that 2,000 screens is a lot for that movie.
Yeah. Although I would say like this is a kind of a special, like unique situation. It has wide appeal, tackles concepts that are really approachable. It's not just like a indie drama, really like super art house feeling movie. It feels like a mainstream movie. If somebody told you that Paramount was releasing it, you wouldn't really bat an eye because all the CGI is up to snuff. Like everything is tight in the movie. Um, but yeah, it's a. I was talking about this the other day though that AMC A-list is really a boon for independent films because most of the time you'll only go if you're gonna pay $20 for a movie ticket, you're gonna go see Doctor Strange 2, which has all of the theater slots right now. It's insane. Like 90% of the screens are Doctor Strange, and they're all full anyway. But we watched like a few different independent movies recently, like the Nick Cage movie. Um, what is it? The Burden of Unimaginable Talent or something, which was like it was good. It was definitely a nice twist on things. But if you think about it, that also is just kind of like a regular action comedy movie that adds this layer of like self awareness, like because it's Nick Cage playing Nick
Yeah,
Cage.
yeah.
Um, but all in all, it's not really. So it's an independent movie packaged as a more commercial film, and I think
Hmm.
that's what it takes if you want to break out. Your independent film has to have some sort of like more mainstream quality, whether it's like this self awareness thing that that movie did, or a lot of like great multiverse callbacks, like everything
Hmm.
everywhere all at once to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Again, these festivals that like to layer, the big gala with celebrity talent and some of the little art house movies. South by Southwest does it. Cannes going to do it again. They're going to show, you know, they're going to show Maverick. They're going to do a tribute to Tom Cruise, and they're going to show Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, which I think is going to be a huge hit this summer. And I feel like there was some. Oh, they're going to show Cronenberg's latest, which should be fun. But the thing I'm kind of interested in hearing a little bit more about is what you think is going to happen in terms of their market. Because we talked a little bit about that a few weeks ago, the idea that digital marketplaces are kind of growing, and a lot of exhibitors and distributors realize they didn't have to spend $5,000 or $10,000 to to go to Cannes and to be part of the marché. So I'm wondering, you know, what are you hearing? Are you hearing anything? Because I saw some numbers, but
From what I'm seeing based on my network, about 60% of people who are going to Cannes pre-pandemic are returning to Cannes this year. This is the first kind of year where everyone feels like they can go safely, but are
mhm,
deciding not to go due to lack of market conditions. So I think, especially Cannes is such a special place as it is kind of like a vacation, really. So
yeah,
it's not so
got the
much fully
destination
work.
thing happening too.
So it's not as affected, I would say, as other markets will be. I think we're going to really see the test when AFM rolls around and maybe
Hmm.
next year's Berlinale, which is less of a destination and more of a pure market. So and maybe even
Yeah,
TIFF too.
yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I think I read somewhere that they had over 12,000 registrants and over 4,000 films. So it'll be interesting to see. Uh, another kind of twisted irony on Can is that they brought Farhadi in as a juror. Did you hear about that whole scene with the hero or a hero?
Uh, yeah, I remember reading something about it, but refresh. Maybe you can.
So it's just interesting because I evidently, this was the Iranian submission for Oscar this year in the international feature category, and one of he, one of the students, one of his film students, alleged that he had lifted the premise for a hero, which was about a man on leave from uh, a debtor's prison who stumbles on a bag of money. Uh, it, it basically was saying that it was plagiarized and won the case,
Wow.
or Farhadi lost the case, but he was just invited. because it was a winner last year. It was invited to be on the jury, so it'll be interesting what the PR machine revs up for that one.
I mean, how many different plots can we come up with before everything is seen as plagiarism off of something, right? Like every movie is
That's
kind
true.
of like another movie. I just watched Bad Guys, which is this child's animation movie, and they have
All right.
some Ocean's 11 elements in there. Is this a Ocean's 11 plagiarism? Like, come on.
That's
Anything with a
funny. Well,
heist.
yeah, anything with a heist, it's been done. Well, there was some. I remember hearing some time ago that there were really only 5 or 6 ideas, and that every movie was basically, somehow connected to one of those ideas, and
Mhm.
just putting new filmmaker spin on it. Well, let's shift gears for a minute and talk a little bit about what's happening on the festival circuit. Um, Other than Cannes, I saw that Tribeca announced its lineup. They moved their dates. They're June 8th through the 19th this year. They've always been in the spring, so that's kind of
Yeah,
a change for them.
it's surprising. I wonder why they made that change. Summer's not usually a great time, especially that'll be right after Cannes. So I don't know how many people are itching to go to New York in June with that
Yeah, and you
humidity.
could and you can buy a full pass for the bargain basement price of $1,350.
Yeah, I don't. Who are these people? We need to
They can
market to
afford to
these
show that
people.
out.
Yeah,
Or you can buy the at-home pass for $150 for the virtual section. And the other thing I found interesting, and I know we do this a lot with Filmocracy, but it wasn't super clear which titles were going to be available exclusively online versus which films were only in theaters and which films are available in both. It was kind of a mess, actually, for a big budgeted festival like them to not make that cleaner. I mean, I think it's something that has been pretty obvious. Some of the festivals last year said, point blank, in New York, Telluride, was it? Like, they were all in person, Venice, maybe even. And then some were just very open about the fact that we're going to be a hybrid, and you can see them online, you can see them in person. Sundance did a lot of that, South by, but I don't know. It's a little
yeah.
confusing.
I mean, even we have that problem, right? Because there's so many options: in person, virtual, virtual on demand. What are the terms you're using for each of them? It's kind of confusing, right? Virtual, what does that really mean? Does that mean
Right.
timed? Does that mean on demand? So we'll figure that out too. But yeah, it does seem like in general we're all moving towards either a hybrid or even pure physical environment again. I think everyone's kind of itching to get back to the way things were, but cases are ticking up again. It's rearing its
Yeah,
ugly
I read
head.
that this morning. I read that this morning. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, obviously, I know a little bit more about it, but the audience doesn't. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with the Filmocracy film market, because that's an exciting initiative. And with Filmocracy Fest, we'll certainly have some in person and online.
Yeah, that's great to bring it up because it's really valuable for filmmakers. I mean, what are we going to film festivals for, really? Like to get small audiences, or is it really to try to find that golden deal that you're all looking for? And so, what does that take? I mean, it takes meeting with executives who have the power, right? So that's what the Filmocracy Film Market does: is we put you face to face in a virtual environment with the executives from well-known companies, production companies that can take your script to screen, that can take your finished film to theaters, and putting you with those decision makers, because that's ultimately what you want as a filmmaker, right? Like if you have a few hundred people in a theater watch your film and give applause, that's great. But ultimately, you have much greater, grander visions for your films. So I think our way of doing it is very unique in that we're giving you 4-minute chunks to meet with an executive, and you can pitch your project. And if they like you, they can give you more time. If they don't, then you just move on to the next one, and you can meet with 4 or 8 executives in one event, which I mean that's a win right there.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about with Filmocracy Fest, I mean, and I'd love to just have you give the snapshot of the scriptwriter showdown too, because I think that's again another really interesting way to use digital platforms like Filmocracy to help generate exposure for emerging talent. But the idea that we can create a program, right, with a roster of executives and a roster of projects, and filmmakers are learning who these people are and what companies are participating, and the industry executives are learning who's participating, on the sales side and on the creative talent side, and so it establishes a bit of a rapport and an opportunity to reach out and stay connected, and that's something I think gets lost these days.
Yeah, there's a lot of like things that say they're going to help you achieve something, but it's only really giving you like a piece of that journey. And that's just another way to monetize, right? So, Filmocracy, Film Market, which will be a part of the Filmocracy Fest this year, is just like direct to the point. You filmmaker, you executive, you make deal. Here we go. Like let's just cut to the chase here. And our first event went really well. People are very happy. Testimonials are amazing, and we're doing it again. All the executives are on board. We're going to get more executives, invite more people, and just keep blowing it up because this is the way. This is the new way for you to get your film out there.
Awesome. Well, I think that pretty much covers some of the subjects that we wanted to bring up today, Paul. If there's anything else you want to throw at me, feel free to. Otherwise, I feel like we covered it.
No, I think we're good. We made this short and sweet. I'm not going to say it's because Justin wasn't here, but you know, if you don't see a tiger in a forest. Anyway, we will
We
catch
miss you,
all.
Justin.
We'll catch you all on the flip side.
All right. Thanks, Paul.